Good morning, Marty. How you doing?
Hi, Joe. Back for another great show. I'm looking forward to this discussion with Peter. I checked him out on LinkedIn, so this looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one. So today we're joined by Peter Martinez. He's the head of channel at Vention, where their mission is quite simple: to make industrial automation easier and more acceptable for all manufacturers. So a little bit of numbers from Vention here. They were founded in 2016. They have over 3,000 clients on 5 continents and over 100,000 platform users. Wow, that's a lot of information there. With PSA being one of them. We are one of their platform users. So that's a great product. We're going to learn more about it. So initially, if you want to learn more about Vention, you can visit their website at www.vention.io. That's www.vention.io. Hey, Peter, how are you this morning?
Doing well, sir. Morning, Joe. Morning, Marty. Greetings from Augusta, Georgia on this sub-freezing November day.
Wow. So are you hanging out post the trade show down there, FabTech?
Yes and no. I actually live in Augusta, but I did go to FabTech last week because it was about 2 hours up the road. So that was a convenient coincidence, but I called a great state of Georgia home.
Oh, fantastic. In Augusta. Wow.
Yes,
So
sir.
have you gone to the Masters at any
I have
point in
been
time?
fortunate enough to attend a few rounds as a spectator.
Wow.
Certainly not going to be invited to play on that course anytime soon with my 30 handicap.
Well, well, you can always aspire, right?
Indeed.
Okay. So, hey, that's quite a mission you have there to make, industrial automation easier and more acceptable for all manufacturers. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. I think what we have seen in the market is that automation, controls, robotics, probably for the first 50, 60 years of their existence has really been something, reserved for premium, high throughput manufacturers with global footprint, multi-billion dollar enterprise, et cetera. And I think starting with the evolution of some new technologies, collaborative robots, open source SDKs, things like that, in the let's say kind of the late 2000s, early 2010s, the barriers of entry started to become reduced for small and medium-sized manufacturers or even job shops to introduce some level of automation into their processes. But that being said, there were still a lot of inefficiencies that our CEO Etienne Lacroix experienced when he was a machine designer in his own right, where, for example, things like having to source components from various distributors, having to check stock at multiple suppliers, having to hold inventory in order to make lead times. So he took a look back at what was going on in the market of consumer goods and the preferences we expect in our own lives, and took a look at models like IKEA and Amazon, where you have transparent pricing, flat pack shipping, same day or same week delivery, trying to break some of the legacy inefficiencies associated with maybe building an automotive assembly line where, small and medium sized manufacturers who don't have necessarily the capital nor the longevity of product life cycle to embrace traditional automation methods. We wanted to put those tools on a web-based cloud platform from both a hardware, software, and controls perspective, to allow manufacturers to really be more a master of their own destiny versus having to fully rely on suppliers.
Great. So you mentioned something there, that one cloud platform. And that's really pretty interesting because from the PSA perspective, and we do business with Vention, so put that out there. But we have some of our engineers that use that one cloud platform where we're able to go into a 3D design platform, design it, get a bill of materials, right? And then get pricing very, like you said, very transparent. And it's quite a sales tool in of itself. We use that platform to then engage the customers with concept reviews and things like that, and also with your team uh, going through design reviews and concept as well. So it is a really nice platform.
Yeah, and I think what we've sort of seen an evolution as to where we started. We initially started our platform with 70 different modular components, and now we've grown to several thousand. Or you might think of a Vention as a light version of SolidWorks in terms of the ability. You're not necessarily creating net new components, but you can quickly configure from a library of modular components. Get your pricing, get your shipping weight, get your auto-generated assembly instructions, and then maybe you're going to introduce a robot into that ecosystem, or maybe some linear actuation. And being able to go from fixed static components like our extruded aluminum profiles, incorporate motion, incorporate robotics, and then have a common control system that can run the robot, that can run any seventh or eighth axis, for example, or Cartesian gantry systems, and being able to simulate not just the physical plans and CAD layout of that system, but also simulate the motion, the cycle time, build your program in advance before any money is exchanged often in many cases, which really allows systems integrators such as yourself and your estimation team, your concepting team, as well as our end user customers to just sort of shorten the time to market from going from idea to purchasable bill of materials, which can then be deployed.
Right. So we're kind of going down this path of talking a little bit about your Vention and how you go to market. So how do you differentiate yourselves? What are some of those key value propositions that that Vention has?
I think I like to kind of divide that into, we have some product differentiators, but also some process and ecosystem differentiators. So from a product perspective, we firmly believe we have the strongest extrusion aluminum on the market. We use a premium aluminum alloy 6003, which is, normally what you'll find in the market is 6063. So when you think about things like moment inertia, tensile strength, how things are linked together, vibrational resistance, we have a very strong base, let's say, on which to build our platform from a hardware perspective. But I think if we wanted to become the 20th aluminum extrusion company on the market, that's not really a highly differentiated business, in and of itself. Then it's a Me Too product. Where we differentiate is being our own global stocking distributor. And what I mean by that is, whether it's from our operations facility in Europe, in Berlin, or in North America, in Montreal, we have a real-time understanding of every piece of inventory we have, where it's located, how long it would take to ship, and the ability to go from that, design of, let's say, a robotic work cell for machine tending, and know with certainty what components are available, how long it's going to take to get it, where it's coming from, and really take a lot of principles that we've sort of learned from our e-commerce personal lives and apply that to industrial hardware. Whereas for a traditional systems integration, you'd be on the phone with Tom, Dick, and Larry getting quotes for the 15 different pieces of equipment that you need to put your value-added cell together. And being able to bring that all to a common platform where everything is stocked, everything is available, and not just having price transparency, but also lead time transparency. When you think about the supply chain interruptions that started in early 2020, we found our customers really benefited from being able to go single source for a variety of components, and having a clear understanding of when they'd be able to leverage those components.
Yeah, certainly that almost like the one-stop shop kind of works out really nice with your platform to get, like you just talked about earlier, robotics, motion control, extruded aluminum, ancillary accessories. I mean, you guys have it all on your platform.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate in the sense that we started, of course, 5-6 years ago just using Vention components, but then partnering with companies like Doosan Robotics, like Fanuc Robotics, like On Robot, like Universal Robots, Epson, Schunk. We've been able to, take our solutions, a lot further by not just relying on our own hardware, but also being able to incorporate not just from a distribution perspective, but from a full digital twin and integrated platform perspective, components from multiple manufacturers and a common user interface, which can all be configured right on your browser. You don't need to use a teach pendant, for example, to program a Vention palletizer. You can do it. You can log in on your iPad and use our machine cloud while you're sitting at your facility in Pennsylvania, Joe. You can upload a new program to your customer's plant floor in California, without ever touching the machine. So these are sort of kind of how we've evolved from just our components to combining the components of others, from static to adding controls, and now from edge control to true cloud-based control of robotic ecosystems.
Yeah, in a fairly short period of time. You think you founded in 2016. Wow, that's quite a leap.
Indeed. I mean, I think, whenever you start a venture-backed business, they're certainly looking for more than 10 to 15% growth every year, and that puts a lot of demands on our product development team, on our technical support team. But we've grown to almost 400 people now, where just 5 years ago we were at 10. So we've been able to also secure the backing of some premium investors like Bain Capital, like Fidelity, like Georgian Partners to really give us, the financial backing as well as global reach that we were seeking to do this. But yeah, the pace of acceleration of Vention is quite fun. And when you think about maybe a 6-month product life cycle where you at PSA are putting together a multi-million-dollar cell for one of your customers, of which we might be the framing provider or an actuator provider, oftentimes our product mix has considerably expanded by the time we go from quote to order. So it makes for an interesting challenge keeping up on the commercial front, but we feel very fortunate to have the development pace that our investors and our executive team have set for us. I think it's really allowed us to grow, and also not just focusing on one thing. We're not just a hardware platform. We're not just a software company. We're not just a logistics company. We felt to really change the industry as far as how industrial components are sourced and deployed, we had to tackle all of it.
Joe, if I can jump in, Joe?
Absolutely.
Permission?
Sure.
To ask a question? Peter, I find this fascinating. And before COVID, I probably wouldn't be surprised by what you're saying. After COVID, I'm kind of surprised by what you're saying. And this whole idea of real time, I hope that's a fair question. And you've indicated this isn't easy, I guess. There's a lot of challenge, but COVID had to affect something, or give me some feedback on that.
I mean, certainly we were not, I'd be lying if I said that we didn't feel, some supply chain shortages, but I think because we were operating outside of the traditional industrial distribution ecosystem, for example, if let's say manufacturer X has 40 high-tech stocking distributors in North America, if manufacturer X has a problem, all 40 of those distributors are going to feel it, right? And we, I would say, at times had to quote, 3-4 weeks delivery where we would have liked to quote 1, but we've really been able to recover and insulate ourselves. I would say most Vention orders ship next day. So we're in a situation now where do we run out of stock of components from time to time? Sure, but by controlling our own supply chain from extrusion through delivery, I think that's where we're at least as well positioned as one can be, given the realities, because we don't have to rely on a middleman.
That's great.
Quite unique.
Hope I answered your question.
Joe?
I mean, the short answer is yes. Of course, there was shortages last year. We make motion controllers. Those have electronics in them. Sometimes things get delayed, but we have been able to recover. And I think, like all businesses, we did some strategic reshoring as well as diversity of our upstream supply as well, to ensure that we were more insulated if something like this happens again.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Peter, Vention was a startup organization, like you mentioned earlier, back in 2016. What attracted you to Vention when you were looking at your career and said, "Hey, I'm going to look at Vention"?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Joe, because I joined Vention in April of 2017 as its first employee outside of Canada. And
Mm,
Canada, as you know,
great.
had some of the most restrictive COVID entry and exit and quarantine requirements of any country. So I didn't even get to say shake hands with my colleagues or feel Vention until I'd been in the business for 4 months. But to directly answer your question, I was the director of global accounts for actually a Pennsylvania-based company called Amatech, based in Berwyn, probably not too far from where some of your facilities are at PSA. More specifically, I was responsible for the Creaform division in the Ultra Precision Technologies group. We were in the precision measurement business, and I was tasked with selling a robotic 3D scanning cell and bringing that to our global customers like Honda and Ford and Nissan, that sort of thing. And whenever you're working in the inspection world, your jigs and your tooling and your work holdings are quite an important part of that. Parts that you want to measure with high precision need to be clamped. They don't float in space. They can't be moving in the air.
Correct.
And we would go to tool shops and ask for quotations for maybe a work holding for the front fascia of a Chevrolet so we could scan it. I would get quotes for 6 to 8 months, $60,000, hours and hours of design. I said, this isn't going to work. So one of my colleagues discovered this thing called Vention.
Hmm.
So and we were able to then answer our customers' needs in a couple of days and able to get our capital goods out the door much faster because Vention provided us with an accelerator that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So play the movie forward another year. I saw the position for head of channel posted on LinkedIn, reached out to the hiring manager, and here we are. But in the short answer, how did I land at Vention? I started at Vention as a customer.
Nice. Nice.
Mm, that's great. That's a great story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd been in the
Well,
startup world before, and I had the itch to go back. I really enjoyed working at Amatech. I learned a lot there. I think it's a first-class business, and you can see how well they've done against the others during COVID. If you look at their stock price and the record earnings call they just had. But I worked at a startup called Rethink Robotics for 2 years prior to Amatech, and I was very sensitive to making sure there was what I call some meat behind those potatoes. Rethink Robotics had a great idea, but in the end, they weren't the winner in the space because the hardware was not up to the level of Universal Robots, for example,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that company ended up liquidating. So I enjoyed my 4 years in a large S&P 500 stable business, but I really liked my experience in a startup environment. I liked the people, I liked the agility, I liked how fast we could go, going back to what you mentioned. And Vention gave me the opportunity to exercise what I learned in the big business, have the culture of the startup, but also have the tangible product and sales wins that are indicative of a healthy business. And Vention checked a lot of boxes for me in that regard.
Yeah, sure. And it's just accelerated, since you joined. Has there been any growing pains? I mean, you're in 5 different continents, Vention is. Has there been any growing pains when you're accelerating a growth from 10 individuals to 400 in such a short period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so when I joined, we were about 200 people. I think we're at 380 at last check as of yesterday. And one of the main challenges we had, and I think um, I'll I'll preface this comment afterwards, but we had a hard time hiring people. Until unfortunately the last 3 months when the tech labor market burst, there was a true war on talent going on. So when
Mm,
you want to
yeah.
grow your business and you've got venture money, they expect you to spend it and hire people. Hiring people was a challenge. There was a lot of other companies that had good products and competitive offers. So hiring, I think was a challenge because the labor market was very very robust in high tech. I think we've seen a little bit of a correction of that going on in the last 2 months. But from a more tangible perspective, taking a business that was primarily serving North America, and we sent 4 people to Berlin, Germany, and said, start a business. We're now at almost 40 people over there, founding a GmbH, opening bank accounts, finding warehousing space and operations staff in Germany, finding people to come work and sell the product, all the while they couldn't go visit the headquarters in Canada due to quarantine restrictions. So it's been opening our U.S. office in Boston was a bit more straightforward. We did that sort of after some, let's say, border restrictions had been lifted by both the U.S. and Canadian governments. But, I think trying to double the size of your business and headcount in an ultra competitive labor market was certainly a challenge for us. I think we did very well, but I won't say it was easy. On the other hand, effectively going to Germany, you sort of have to set up a new company. It's not, a subsidiary. It's not a satellite office. If you want to rent a car, for example, you need a German bank account. These are the sort of things that we had to learn and do it on the fly without headquarters being able to really go support it for the first few months. So I was very impressed to see the resourcefulness and agility of our people that really embrace these challenges and believe very strongly in building something from nothing. And I'm sure we have plans for further expansion in the future as well.
Oh, fantastic. So with locations, obviously Canada, United States, Germany, and others, do you go to market the same way in each of those locations, those countries?
At its core, yes. And what I mean by that is, you have a website available in the English language or the French language in Quebec or the German language. You can configure your items. We have a staff that can support you with design and sales. So at the core, yes. But as we've evolved our business, and this is sort of where I think my role comes into play, Joe, and on our relationship with PSA, is that we saw what we thought was going to be competition for systems integrators actually being a good source of synergy. So we've decided to go to market through channels as well as just directly. Because Joe, I'm sure when your mechanical designers, even though you're not the final user of our product, you can benefit very much from that speed of delivery, the price transparency, the robust materials. And when I talk to systems integrators about where they drive money in a project, I often find the true profit centers are maybe, application identification, helping the customer define their problem, make a scope of work that is achievable. The controls design is often highly differentiated. Maybe the transformative end of arm tooling, the on-site install, training the customer, the hours of billing after the fact. But when I was talking to integrators, they were saying, mechanical design, mechanical build, concepting, there are things that we need to do, but we'd rather buy than make.
Mm-hmm.
And Vention is sort of an outsourced extension of your engineering team, Joe. I've found where people say, "Hey, we're doing this. Whatever's going on inside that machine frame is PSA's business." But I'm sure you have limited mechanical design bandwidth. Everybody does. So you want those ladies or gentlemen designing and cutting and building things that are net new, that are highly differentiated, things that you can charge a lot for machine framing, machine guarding. These sort of things have become somewhat commoditized, and we think we have the best supply chain to deliver those things. So we found, in addition to serving end users well, what we thought was going to be our competition and systems integrators have actually turned out to be a large growth channel for us. So going back to Europe, when you think about language skills, locality, scaling quickly, we very much leveraged our relationships with systems integrators, both in the US and in Europe, to help us get to market faster and supply them to have access to their customer list, which would otherwise take us years to develop on our own.
Yeah, Peter, I'll tell you, you guys are a great partner to PSA, without a doubt. I mean, I feel we work really, really well together, the two organizations. We collaborate extremely well on projects and opportunities. Your team does a phenomenal job of getting an opportunity or finding the lead, valuing that opportunity, vetting it out, and then you decide whether it's something you're going to take internally, or you could bring in an integrator like a PSA. And when you come to PSA with this opportunity, like I said before, it's well vetted out. You have a lot of detailed information that we can jump right in there and start conversations with a customer that, we can then bring value to that opportunity. And, it just works really, really well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Joe. And I think what our relationships with systems integrators allow us to do is punch above our weight. For example, Vention will go on site and do turnkey installations of our Fanuc industrial palletizer, of our Doosan collaborative robot palletizer, of our universal robot palletizers. But sometimes a customer wants a full packaging line of complete custom automation where maybe it doesn't align with exactly what we're able to do ourselves. So in partnering, with PSA, it allows us to take on things that are outside of the scope of our own turnkey offerings. And I think that's worked really well. And I know in speaking to some of the customers that we've worked on together, they're now coming back to PSA for more projects and in turn additional consumption of Vention. So going back to the go-to-market strategy, if it's not something we can do ourselves, we don't necessarily want to get involved in every project, but if there's something that aligns with the core competencies of our partners, PSA's been a great example of that. I think we've done a very nice job together at some plastics companies in New York, for example. So we have some success stories through partners. Also we have great customers like Sager Foods, direct palletizing companies, and I think we also address businesses of a lot of different scales. You'll see some of the largest automotive manufacturers in the world leveraging Vention, but you'll also see the third generation CNC shop where the son is trying to figure out how to modernize his business as his father or mother prepares for retirement, and being able to attack the big fish directly or in partnership with a company like PSA, but also providing an automation ecosystem that is accessible to a business of any scale is something I really personally like about Vention. I don't think automation should be reserved for the privileged few. I grew up in a country that's entering its second recession during my professional life, and one where, at least in my college years, manufacturing was grossly undervalued as a national asset or as a competency that people should enjoy, think is cool, specialize in. And being able to be a small part of making automation more accessible and adoptable by businesses of any scale, not just Ford and Lockheed Martin, and Unilever, but Johnson Machine Incorporated. That's just a company I made up. But those are the sort of things that make me proud to work at a business like Vention, because there's a tangible benefit to American manufacturing for the little guy as well as the big guy.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of small businesses, and that's music to my ears, Peter. And we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the United States of America in that's 4 years, I guess. What a story that can tell about your company you're going to build on, and that you can tell, on that 250th anniversary of our country.
Yeah, and I think it's been great to working for a company based out of Montreal. It's allowed me as a professional, to grow and interact with people in different parts of the world, and to bring the best of both sides of the border together. I was fortunate enough by the age of 27 to have conducted business in person in almost 30 countries. But I can tell you, Canada has always been my favorite. I've been working for either a Canadian company or divisions of a business based in Canada for the last 6 years. I'm not sure why it turned out that way, why they wanted a Texan or now a Georgian on their teams. But it's been great, because Canada has a lot of the exact same, let's say, labor reshoring challenges that we have as the United States to remain competitive. I think they certainly felt a lot of supply chain strains. I didn't check the toilet paper situation in Canada during COVID, but I bet they had empty shelves as well.
Oh yeah, they did. I married a Canadian. I married a Canadian. I can tell you we've heard the same stories from the family and friends back in Canada for sure. So when you look at the next generation coming, for whether it's the tech schools, high schools, colleges, universities, does Vention play a role in any of those?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one thing that comes to mind, last year we were very proud to partner with an organization called ECAMI, which is it's called the East Kentucky Advanced Manufacturing Institute, if I remember my acronym correctly. And what their mission is, that in for better for worse, climate politics have gutted the coal industry and the livelihoods of many families there. I won't get into the motivation of it on this call, but it is a reality. When an industry sort of ends, there's collateral damage, people's children wondering where their food is coming from, for example. And these technical colleges, even in universities, we're very proud to partner with the McNair Aerospace Center at the University of South Carolina. We're proud to supply Texas A&M. These are opportunities that we want to be a part of the education of industry, and we're certainly not doing that alone. There are great suppliers like Fanuc, Universal Robots, OnRobot, partners of ours that also are very, very proactive in this space. One of our systems integration partners, Telemon Robotics, they did, I believe they outfitted like 40 workrooms at Vinicius University in Indiana last year with robotics and Vention hardware. So I think not only do we want to participate in this space, we have an obligation to do it for the health of North American industry. And of course, there's the business externalities of that. What you learn at your trade school or at your university is often what you end up using when you get hired into industry.
Exactly.
So, of course, I think that will pay us back in some way indirectly. But the short answer, Joe, is absolutely yes. Whether it's training school to teach coal miners how to become machinists, or universities where you have PhD students doing robotics projects, from the level of retraining, a blue collar worker to a PhD student, I think Vention has a role to play in both of those realms.
That's great to hear. Yeah, thank you for that. Much appreciated. So, Marty, I don't know. This has been a great conversation. I don't,
Great
feeling pretty good
great
about it.
conversation. I normally ask, well, is there something that we didn't talk about that you want to bring home to us? This was a wide-ranging and a fascinating discussion, but with all that being said, Peter, is there something in your brain that's popping into your brain and say, well, I want to make sure I tell the audience this? Is there something you want to mention?
Sure, and I'll admit this might be a bit self-serving, so bear with
Go
me,
right ahead.
Joe and Marty. But keep an eye on Vention's latest release called Machine Cloud. When you think about the evolution of industrial machines from parent-child PLC relationships, edge control versus centralized control, we're trying to do something pretty different here where you go from we started with the mechanical design of your product, maybe the mechatronic design of a robotic cell, the sourcing, but taking that a step further to deployment and remote deployment as well. When you think about potential, we may have another pandemic in the future. Business travel is not what it used to be. People are tolerating more and more virtual business, remote commissionings, things of that nature. And we really want to be at the forefront of how people take the next step and not just receiving their goods, but also maintaining them, monitoring them. So if there's a problem going on in the middle of the night and the factory manager needs to change a pallet pattern because they switched production, that can be done. The gentleman can log into Vention.io on their iPad, log into their machine directly, see what's going on, and make real changes and upload it without having to interrupt the machine as it's working and without having to touch anything. So these are the kind of things that we've just started to release with our Machine Cloud, which was launched officially at our Demo Day product launch event in September. But I think that, is now in its first iteration. But, Vention's only been around 5 years. So if I look at the growth that we were able to do on what we released 2 years ago to now, I have very high hopes for that product, not just for end users, but also maybe for subsystems for large things that you're putting together, Joe, as we support you in your large projects. And, I would say, if you're ever in Montreal, or Boston, give us a call. We would love to visit you, invite anybody to our showroom. And next year we'll be at Automate, we'll be at Automatica, we'll be ATX West. We'll be participating in all the industry events where you'd expect to find Vention or any industrial supplier. And that's where you can experience Vention not just in the cloud and our platform, but we also understand things need to see and be touched and that sort of thing. So we're there. And and finally, I to quote, there was an old political slogan from the 80s called GPAC, give peace a chance. So I'm going to rip that off and say, give extrusion a chance. I think it's got a bad name in the market. there's, no two aluminum profiles are created equal from a metallurgy perspective, from a geometry perspective. And one thing that I think that we can do is really shorten the supply chains and shorten the burden on steel in the world. Steel lead times are way too long right now, and we need steel, as a manufacturing sector. And I feel sometimes we rely on it because maybe an assembler didn't put together an extruded aluminum frame right, or maybe didn't use the right type of linkages, or maybe didn't use premium 6003 alloys. And these are the things where we think we can create sort of a new class of industrial furniture framing and hardware in between your legacy extrusion providers below steel, but really take extrusion as far as it can be taken. We have a lot of really interesting methods of linkages, connections, mechanical poka-yokes that I feel can open up some spaces that previously were only reserved for steel. And by definition, if it was reserved for steel before, that means a lot of time. And if you can turn more projects out of your shop floor, Joe, as a systems integrator, that's more money in your shareholders' pocket if you can do one extra project a year based on saving a couple days over and over again.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, thanks a lot, Peter. This is a great conversation. Much appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. And Marty, it was nice to meet you. I hope to shake hands with you at some industry event or something down the road.
Yeah. Give us your website one more time.
www.vention.io. vention.io.
And our guest has been Peter Martinez. And Peter, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. We do appreciate it.
Likewise. Have a nice afternoon, gentlemen. Take care.